The garage smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. I was under my beat-up Ford F-150, wrestling with a stubborn transmission bolt, when I heard my wife Vanessa's voice floating through the open window above my workbench. "Don't worry, he's clueless," she said into her phone, her voice carrying that particular tone she reserved for talking about me like I was the family dog. "Jack's too busy fixing junk to notice anything real." I froze, wrench in hand, oil dripping onto my forehead. 23 years of marriage, and she still thought I was deaf, dumb, and blind. Well, maybe she had a point about the dumb part. I'd married her, hadn't I? "I know, baby," she continued, and that word hit me like a sledgehammer. Baby. She hadn't called me that in 5 years. "He'll be in that garage until midnight. We could burn the house down and he'd keep working on that stupid truck." The conversation ended, and I heard her heels clicking across the kitchen floor above. I lay there in the dark, staring at the undercarriage of my truck, wondering when exactly my life had turned into a bad country song. Jack Morrison, 45 years old, high school maintenance supervisor, and apparently the last person in Cedar Pines to know his wife was stepping out. Cedar Pines wasn't the kind of town where secrets stayed buried long. Population 8,000, and every one of those people knew your business better than you did. The fact that I was hearing about this from Vanessa herself meant either she'd gotten incredibly sloppy, or she just didn't care anymore. I rolled out from under the truck and sat on my creeper, wiping grease off my hands with a rag that had seen better decades. The garage was my sanctuary, tools organized just the way I liked them, workbench cleared off, everything in its place. Unlike the rest of my life, apparently. 3 days later, I was doing laundry, something Vanessa had suddenly stopped doing, claiming her job at Morrison & Associates law firm was too demanding for household chores. Funny how she'd found time for chores when we were broke newlyweds, but now that she was pulling down decent money as a paralegal, dirty clothes were beneath her. I was checking pockets before throwing her work pants in the washer when I felt it. A small rectangular bulge in the back pocket. A phone. Not her regular iPhone with the sparkly case, but a cheap flip phone that looked like something a drug dealer would use. My hands shook as I opened it. The text history made my stomach drop through the floor. "Can't wait to feel you inside me again." That motel room was perfect. Jack would die if he knew. "Tomorrow night, same place?" The contact name was just C. Real creative, Vanessa. I scrolled through weeks of messages, each one a knife twist. Photos I couldn't look at for more than a second. Plans made around my work schedule. Jokes about my weight, my clothes, my truck. The way I breathed when I slept. The last message was from yesterday. "Rusty anchor tonight. Chad's buying drinks for everyone. You should come celebrate with us." Chad. Chad Brennan, who owned Brennan's Auto Repair on Main Street. Chad, whose wife Tina was Vanessa's best friend from work. Chad, who I'd shared beers with at the Rusty Anchor more times than I could count, listening to him complain about his marriage while he was apparently destroying mine. I sat on the edge of our bed, where she'd been planning her escapes, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not heartbreak, not yet. Something harder and more useful. Anger. But not the hot, stupid kind that gets you arrested. The cold, calculating kind that gets you even. I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and finished the laundry. When Vanessa came home from work, I was in the kitchen making dinner, like nothing had changed. "How was your day, honey?" I asked, not looking up from the stove. "Oh, depositions, filing, the usual boring stuff." She grabbed a bottle of wine from the fridge, wine that had appeared recently, along with new lingerie I hadn't seen her wear. "Tina and I might grab drinks later, girl talk, you understand." "Sure," I said, stirring the pasta sauce. "Say hi to Chad for me." She went very still behind me. "Chad?" "Chad Brennan, Tina's husband. If you run into him at the bar." I turned around and smiled. Small town. You always run into people. Her face had gone pale under her makeup. Right, of course, small town. That Friday, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. Principal Martinez wasn't happy. The boiler in the East Wing was acting up again, but I told him I had food poisoning and would be back Monday. Instead, I parked across from the Sleepy Inn Motel on Route 9, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. Vanessa's Honda Civic was in the parking lot, along with Chad's lifted Chevy Silverado with the flame decals he was so proud of. Room 237. I watched them go in at 2:30 p.m. They came out at 4:15, Vanessa checking her hair in the side mirror of her car, Chad grabbing her ass before they got in their separate vehicles. I waited until they were both gone, then I got to work. The valve stems on Chad's tires came off easier than I'd expected. All 4 tires flat as pancakes in under 2 minutes. Then I took my keys, the same keys that opened every door at Cedar Pines High School, and dragged them along the driver's side of his precious truck, spelling out liar in letters 3 feet tall. For the finishing touch, I pulled a used condom from the motel dumpster and draped it over his windshield wipers. Mrs. Dorsey from next door to the motel was walking her ancient poodle when Chad came back out to find his truck. She had her phone out, recording everything, his screaming, his kicking at the tires, his red face as he called someone, probably Vanessa, to come pick him up. By Saturday morning, the video was all over the Cedar Pines Facebook groups. Cheater Gets What's Coming had been shared 847 times and counting. I was in my garage, humming while I organized my socket set, when Vanessa stormed in. "Someone vandalized Chad's truck yesterday," she said, her voice shaking with rage. "Slashed his tires, keyed his paint job, left disgusting things on his windshield." I looked up from my toolbox. "That's terrible. Why would someone do that?" "I don't know. Maybe someone has it out for him. Maybe it's some kind of jealous ex-girlfriend or business rival or maybe," I said, closing the toolbox with a satisfying click, "someone found out he's been screwing around with married women." The silence stretched between us like a tightrope. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "I don't know what you're implying," she finally said. "I'm not implying anything, honey. I'm just saying that in a small town like this, secrets have a way of getting out. People talk. They see things. They take videos." I smiled. "Maybe you should pick better friends." She turned and walked out without another word. But I could see it in her shoulders, the way she held her head. She knew that I knew, and she knew the game had changed. I went back to organizing my tools, whistling a little tune. This was going to be fun. Monday morning at Cedar Pines High School felt different. The hallways buzzed with the kind of energy that only came from fresh gossip, and I was apparently the main attraction. "Hey, Jack!" called out Mrs. Peterson from the main office as I walked past with my maintenance cart. "Heard you've been having some excitement at home." "Just the usual domestic bliss," I replied, not breaking stride. But I could feel the eyes on me, teachers whispering in doorways, students snickering when they thought I wasn't looking. By lunch, I'd overheard 3 different versions of the Chad's truck story, each one more elaborate than the last. The best part was that nobody suspected me. Jack Morrison, the quiet maintenance guy who fixed their broken toilets and changed their light bulbs. I was invisible, part of the scenery, which made me the perfect person to overhear things. Like Principal Martinez on the phone with his wife. "I heard it was her husband who did it. Can you believe it? Quiet little Jack Morrison, going all vigilante." Or Coach Williams telling the gym teacher, "My money's on the wife. Hell hath no fury, you know." Probably found out about the affair. Wrong on both counts, but I wasn't about to correct them. The real entertainment started when I got home. Vanessa was in the kitchen, pacing like a caged animal, her phone pressed to her ear. "I can't do this anymore, Tina," she was saying. "He knows something. The way he looked at me yesterday, it was like he could see right through me." I made noise coming through the front door, keys jangling, boots heavy on the hardwood. The conversation stopped immediately. "Hi, honey," I called out. "How was work?" "Fine," came the terse reply. I found her in the kitchen, phone nowhere in sight, pretending to read a magazine. Her hands were shaking. "You okay? You look stressed." "I'm fine, just tired." She didn't look up from the magazine. It was upside down. "Maybe you should take a break from those girls' nights out. All that drinking can't be good for you." Her head snapped up. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing. Just concerned about your health." I opened the refrigerator, noting the absence of the wine bottles that had been there yesterday. Funny thing happened at work today. Everyone's talking about that video of Chad's truck. Some people think his wife did it. Tina wouldn't. Others think it was a jealous husband. I pulled out a beer and popped it open. "You know, some guy whose wife was cheating with Chad?" Vanessa's face went white. "That's ridiculous. Chad would never." "Never what?" The trap hung in the air between us. She could finish that sentence and dig herself deeper, or she could shut up and let me know she was guilty. She chose option 3, attack. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" she snarled. "Sitting there with your little smug smile, making your little comments. You think you're so clever." "I think I'm a man who's been married for 23 years and is just now learning who his wife really is." "And what's that supposed to mean?" I took a long pull of my beer, letting the silence build. "It means maybe we should talk about getting some marriage counseling, work on our communication issues." The suggestion hit her like a physical blow. Marriage counseling meant questions. Questions meant answers. Answers meant exposure. I don't think we need counseling." "Really? Because from where I'm sitting it seems like we've got some trust issues to work through." She fled upstairs without another word. 20 minutes later I heard the shower running. Then I heard her on the phone again, voice muffled but urgent. I walked out to the mailbox, taking my time, letting the neighbors see me being the normal, everyday husband. Mrs. Kowalski from across the street waved from her garden. "Evening, Jack. How are you holding up?" "Just fine, Mrs. K. You know how it is. Marriage takes work." "Oh, honey, don't I know it? 37 years with my Stanley, God rest his soul. The secret is communication." "Wise words," I agreed. "Communication is everything." When I got back inside, Vanessa was in the living room, fully dressed in her best going-out outfit. Short skirt, low-cut top, heels that cost more than my monthly truck payment. "I'm meeting Tina for dinner," she announced. "Dressed like that? Must be some fancy place. We might go dancing after." "On a Monday night? In Cedar Pines?" I shook my head. The only place open on Monday is the Rusty Anchor, and that's hardly dancing music. "We might drive to Springfield. Hour and a half each way. You'll be out pretty late." "Is that a problem?" I shrugged. "Just seems like a lot of effort for a Monday night. But hey, you deserve to have fun." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then stopped. "Jack?" "Yeah? Are we okay?" For just a moment, she looked like the woman I'd married. Young, uncertain, maybe even sorry. Then I remembered the text messages, the motel room, the jokes about my breathing. "We're exactly what we've always been, Vanessa. The question is whether you're okay with that." She left without answering. I waited until her taillights disappeared, then I got in my truck and followed. She wasn't going to Springfield. She wasn't even going to the Rusty Anchor. She was going to Chad's house on Elm Street, where his wife Tina was conveniently out of town visiting her sister. I parked 2 blocks away and walked back, staying in the shadows. The living room curtains were open, giving me a perfect view of my wife and my drinking buddy on his couch, going at it like teenagers. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, waiting to feel something. Heartbreak, rage, betrayal, something that would justify the 23 years I'd invested in this marriage. Instead, I felt relieved. The woman on that couch wasn't my wife anymore. She was a stranger who happened to share my last name and half my assets. which meant I didn't owe her anything except what the law required. And the law, as I was about to learn, could be very flexible when you knew how to work it. I walked back to my truck and drove home, already planning my next move. This was war now, and Vanessa had just given me all the ammunition I needed. The next morning, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to my old army buddy Ralph Kowalski, Mrs. K's nephew, who owned the Rusty Anchor and knew every piece of gossip in town. "Jack, heard you've been having some domestic adventures?" "Something like that. Listen, I need some information." "Shoot." "Chad Brennan, what do you know about his business dealings?" Ralph was quiet for a moment. "This official or unofficial?" "Unofficial as it gets. Word is he's been skimming from his repair jobs, charging for parts he doesn't install, billing insurance companies for work he doesn't do. Nothing anyone can prove, but the other mechanics in town have been talking." "Interesting. What else?" "His marriage to Tina's been rocky for years. She's been staying at her sister's place in Springfield more and more. Some people think she's got a boyfriend over there." "And Chad?" "Chad's been consoling himself with whatever's available. Married, single, doesn't seem to matter to him." "Perfect." The second call was to my daughter Maddie, away at college on my dime. "Dad, is everything okay? You never call during the week." "Just wanted to check in. How are classes going?" "Fine. Expensive, but fine." She laughed. "Mom says you're being weird lately. Something about marriage counseling?" My jaw tightened. "Your mother said that?" "Yeah, she called last night. Said you were going through some kind of midlife crisis, accusing her of crazy things, being paranoid and jealous." "And what did you tell her?" "I told her you've always been paranoid. Remember when I was 16 and you thought I was sneaking out? You put a motion detector in my room. You were sneaking out." "That's not the point, Dad. The point is you see conspiracies everywhere. Mom's probably just trying to have a social life and you're turning it into some big drama." I closed my eyes. 23 years of marriage, 18 years of raising a daughter, and this was what I got. A wife who lied about me to our child, and a child who believed every word. "You're right, sweetheart. I'm probably just being silly." "Dad? Are you and Mom okay? Like, really okay?" "We're going to be fine, Maddie. One way or another." After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, staring at the coffee cup Vanessa had left on the counter. It had a lipstick stain on the rim, bright red, the kind she only wore for special occasions, or special people. I picked up the cup and threw it against the wall as hard as I could. It exploded in a shower of ceramic and cold coffee, leaving a stain on the white paint. Then I got the broom and cleaned it up, every last piece. When Vanessa came home, she'd never know it had happened, but I would, and that was enough. The war was just getting started. The Cedar Pines High School annual charity auction was the social event of the year, where the town's elite gathered to bid on donated goods and services while pretending to care about the children's education fund. As head of maintenance, I was required to attend, not as a guest, but as staff, making sure the gymnasium stayed clean and the microphone system worked, which meant I had a front row seat to watch my wife parade around with her boyfriend. Vanessa had outdone herself for the occasion. Black cocktail dress that hugged every curve, diamond earrings I'd bought her for our 10th anniversary, and that confident smile she used to reserve for me. She worked the room like a politician, air-kissing the wives of lawyers and doctors, laughing at jokes that weren't funny. Chad was right beside her, his arm casually draped around her waist like he owned her. He'd traded his usual grease-stained coveralls for a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary, his hair slicked back with enough gel to lubricate a transmission. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. "Shameless," muttered Mrs. Peterson, the school secretary, as she watched them from the refreshment table. In front of the whole town, too. "Maybe they think people are stupid," I replied, adjusting the microphone stand on the makeshift stage. "Maybe they think you're stupid." I looked at her sharply. She was a small woman in her 60s, the kind who'd seen everything and wasn't impressed by any of it. "Excuse me?" Jack, honey, everyone in town knows what's going on except you. At least that's what they think. She patted my arm. But I've been watching you tonight. You know exactly what's happening. And what am I supposed to do about it? That depends. You want to keep playing the fool, or you want to remind people that still waters run deep? Before I could answer, Principal Martinez tapped the microphone for attention. The auction was about to begin, and I needed to make sure everything ran smoothly. It was my job, after all. But as I watched Vanessa and Chad bid on a weekend getaway to Springfield, the same Springfield where Tina supposedly visited her sister, I felt that cold anger crystallizing into something harder and more focused. They wanted a public relationship? Fine. I'd give them a public response. The next morning, I made a trip to the Cedar Pines Public Library, not to check out books, but to use their computers and free Wi-Fi. My home computer was too risky. Vanessa was smart enough to check browser histories. It took me 3 hours to find what I was looking for, but Ralph had been right about Chad's business practices. The Better Business Bureau had 6 complaints filed against Brennan's auto repair in the past 2 years. Insurance fraud investigators had opened 3 separate cases. The state licensing board had received reports of substandard work and overcharging. None of it had stuck yet, but the pattern was clear. Chad Brennan was a crook who'd been flying under the radar by keeping his scams small and local. Time to change that. I started with an anonymous tip to the state insurance fraud hotline, not making anything up, just connecting dots that were already there. Chad had billed Progressive Insurance for a complete engine rebuild on Mrs. Chen's Honda, but I'd seen that car in his lot. He'd swapped in a used engine from the junkyard and pocketed the difference. The second call went to the IRS tip line. Cash payments, unreported income, workers paid under the table. Again, nothing I couldn't prove, just things I'd observed over the years of drinking with Chad and listening to him brag about his business strategies. The third call was more personal. I dialed the number for Tina's sister in Springfield. Hello? Hi, is this Margaret Chen? Yes, who's this? This is Jack Morrison, Tina's friend from Cedar Pines. I was wondering if she was still staying with you. A long pause. I'm sorry. Who did you say you were? Jack Morrison. Tina's been telling people she's visiting you, and I wanted to send her a card for her birthday. I think you have the wrong number. I don't know anyone named Tina. Tina Brennan? From Cedar Pines? Never heard of her, sorry. I thanked her and hung up, smiling for the first time in weeks. Tina wasn't visiting her sister. She was probably shacked up with her own boyfriend, leaving Chad free to pursue his hobbies, which meant both Brennans were lying to everyone, including each other. That evening I was in my garage when I heard Vanessa's car pull into the driveway. She came in through the kitchen door, and I could hear her moving around upstairs, getting ready for another girls' night out. 20 minutes later, she appeared in the garage doorway, dressed to impress and drenched in perfume. I'm going out, she announced. So I gathered. Where to tonight? Tina and I are meeting some friends at the Rusty Anchor. Tina's back from Springfield already? That was a short visit? Vanessa hesitated. She came back early. Funny thing, I said, not looking up from the carburetor I was rebuilding. I called her sister's house today to get Tina's birthday card to her. Margaret Chen says she's never heard of anyone named Tina. The silence stretched so long, I finally looked up. Vanessa was frozen in the doorway, her face pale under her makeup. Maybe I got the wrong number, she said finally. Maybe. Or maybe Tina's been lying about where she goes when she leaves town, just like you've been lying about where you go when you leave the house. I don't know what you're talking about. I set down my wrench and stood up, wiping my hands on a shop rag. Vanessa, we've been married for 23 years. I know when you're lying. The question is, do you know when to stop? She turned and walked away without answering. 5 minutes later, I heard her car backing out of the driveway. I waited until she was gone, then I got in my truck and drove to Chad's house. His Silverado was in the driveway, but the house was dark except for the bedroom window. I parked across the street and settled in to wait. At 11:30, Vanessa's Honda pulled up. She got out, looked around nervously, then hurried to the front door. Chad let her in, and the living room lights came on. I took out my phone and started recording. They were careless, leaving the curtains open, moving around the house like they owned the world. I got 15 minutes of footage before they moved upstairs, but it was more than enough to establish the timeline and location. Then I drove to the Rusty Anchor. Ralph was behind the bar, serving the usual crowd of shift workers and insomniacs. He looked up when I walked in, raising an eyebrow at my serious expression. "Jack, didn't expect to see you tonight. Need to ask you a favor, Ralph." "Shoot." I pulled out my phone and showed him the video. "If anyone asks, you never saw this. But I need you to remember that Vanessa Morrison was not in your bar tonight." Ralph watched the footage, his expression darkening. "Jesus, Jack, right there in Chad's living room?" "Right there in Chad's living room." "And she told you she was coming here?" "Her and Tina, meeting friends for drinks." Ralph shook his head. "Tina hasn't been in here for months. And your wife?" He gestured at the mostly empty bar. "Well, you can see for yourself." "That's what I thought. Thanks, Ralph." "Jack?" He leaned across the bar, lowering his voice. "You need help with anything, you let me know. This is bullshit, what they're doing to you. I appreciate that, but I think I can handle it from here." I drove home and went to bed, leaving the garage light on so Vanessa would think I was still working when she came home. At 2:30 a.m., I heard her car in the driveway, then her footsteps on the stairs, then the shower running. She was washing off the evidence. The next morning, she was gone before I got up, leaving only a note on the kitchen counter. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then made my own plans for the evening. It was time to escalate. Friday afternoon, I left work early and drove to First National Bank of Cedar Pines, where Vanessa and I had maintained our joint accounts for over 20 years. The same accounts she'd been using to fund her affair. New clothes, expensive dinners, hotel rooms. Margaret Sullivan, the branch manager, greeted me with a professional smile. "Jack, how can we help you today?" "I need to make some changes to our accounts," I said, settling into the chair across from her desk. "Security concerns." "What kind of security concerns?" I pulled out my phone and showed her a screenshot of one of Vanessa's text messages, carefully cropped to hide the explicit content, but showing her discussing using Jack's card for the hotel. "Someone's been accessing our accounts without my knowledge. I need to protect our assets." Margaret's expression grew serious. "Of course. What would you like to do?" "I want to freeze all joint credit cards and lines of credit pending a security review. I also want to transfer half the money from our joint checking and savings into a new individual account. I'll need both account holders present for—" "Actually, you don't." I pulled out a folder of documents I'd prepared. "According to the account agreements we signed, either party can freeze the accounts for security reasons, and the money I want to transfer represents my direct deposits from the school district. I can prove every dollar came from my paychecks." Margaret reviewed the paperwork, frowning. "This is unusual, Jack. Are you and Vanessa having problems?" "We're having security problems. Someone has unauthorized access to our accounts, and I need to protect our assets until we can figure out who and how." It took 2 hours, but when I left the bank, Vanessa's access to our money was effectively cut off. Her credit cards would be declined. Her debit card wouldn't work. The line of credit she'd been using for her shopping sprees was frozen. My next stop was the phone company. As the primary account holder, I had the right to review all usage on our family plan, including the burner phone Vanessa thought I didn't know about. The customer service representative was apologetic but helpful. "I'm sorry, Mr. Morrison, but I don't show any additional lines on your account." "That's impossible. My wife has been using a second phone." "If she has another phone, it's not on your plan. She must have opened a separate account." which meant she was paying for her affair phone with cash or a credit card I didn't know about. Interesting. Can you tell me about any unusual charges on our account? International calls, premium services, anything out of the ordinary? Let me check. Actually, yes. There have been several calls to a number in Springfield, long conversations, mostly in the evenings. Springfield, where Tina was supposedly visiting her sister, but where Margaret Chen had never heard of her. Can you give me that number? I'm not supposed to, but, considering the circumstances, she read off the digits. I thanked her and left, already planning my next move. The Springfield number belonged to a man named Derek Walsh. A quick internet search revealed he was a divorced construction worker with a Facebook page full of selfies and complaints about his ex-wife. I called the number from my truck. Yeah? Is this Derek Walsh? Who wants to know? This is Jack Morrison from Cedar Pines. I think you've been talking to my wife. A long pause. I don't know what you're talking about. Vanessa Morrison, about 5'6", blonde hair, tells people she's a paralegal. Another pause. Oh shit, you're the husband. That's right. And you're the guy she's been calling when she's not with her boyfriend Chad. Boyfriend? What boyfriend? She said she was separated. She's a lot of things, Derek, but separated isn't one of them. She's been playing both of us. Jesus Christ, she seemed so... shit. Yeah, shit is right. How long have you been seeing her? About 3 months. She said she was getting divorced, just waiting for the paperwork to go through. The only paperwork she's waiting for is the hotel receipts from her other boyfriend. Derek was quiet for a long moment. What are you going to do? That depends. Are you interested in hearing the truth about Vanessa Morrison, or do you want to keep believing her lies? I want to know the truth. I spent 20 minutes telling Derek everything. The affair with Chad, the lies about Tina, the secret phone, the whole sordid story. By the end, he was cursing like a sailor and promising to never speak to Vanessa again. I can't believe I fell for this, he said. She seemed so genuine, so hurt by her marriage. She's good at playing the victim. It's one of her specialties. Well, she won't be playing me anymore. Thanks for calling, Jack. I'm sorry about, everything. Not your fault, Derek. You didn't know she was married. After I hung up, I sat in my truck for a few minutes, processing what I'd learned. Vanessa wasn't just cheating with Chad. She was running a full-scale operation, juggling multiple relationships and lies. She'd turned infidelity into an art form, which meant my response needed to be equally sophisticated. I drove home and waited. Vanessa came in at 6:30 looking frazzled and angry. She threw her purse on the kitchen counter and glared at me. My credit card was declined today, she said without preamble. That's weird. Did you call the bank? I called the bank. They said you froze all our accounts. I did. We had a security breach. Someone was making unauthorized charges. What unauthorized charges? I pulled out a printout of our recent credit card statements, with certain items highlighted in yellow. Hotel charges we didn't make, restaurant bills for places we didn't go, clothing purchases I never saw you bring home. She stared at the papers, her face cycling through several emotions. I can explain those. I'm sure you can. But until we get this sorted out with the fraud department, I thought it was safer to freeze everything. You can't just freeze our accounts without telling me. Actually, I can. I'm protecting our assets from unauthorized use. This is ridiculous. I need access to our money. For what? The question hung in the air like a challenge. She could tell me the truth, that she needed money to continue her affairs, or she could keep lying and dig herself deeper. She chose to dig. For groceries, for gas, for normal household expenses. I can give you cash for groceries and gas. How much do you need? I need my credit cards back. Why? What do you need to buy that you can't buy with cash? She opened and closed her mouth like a fish, unable to come up with an answer that wouldn't incriminate her. "This is insane," she finally said. "You're being paranoid and controlling." "I'm being careful. Someone's been stealing from us, Vanessa. Until we figure out who, we need to be smart about our money." She stormed upstairs, and I heard her on the phone again, her voice rising and falling in frustrated conversation. Probably calling Chad, or maybe Derek, trying to figure out how to fund her lifestyle without access to our accounts. Good luck with that. An hour later, she came back downstairs dressed for another night out. "Where are you going?" I asked. "Out." "With what money?" She held up a $20 bill. "I had this in my purse." $20? That won't get you far. "Tina's buying tonight." Tina, who's supposedly visiting her sister in Springfield, but whose sister has never heard of her. Vanessa's face went white. "What?" "I called Margaret Chen yesterday. Funny thing, she doesn't know anyone named Tina Brennan." You called?" "I called because I was worried about Tina. Thought maybe something had happened to her. But it turns out she's fine. She's just not where you said she was." Vanessa grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I don't have to listen to this." "No, you don't, but you might want to call Derek and let him know you won't be visiting Springfield anymore." She froze with her hand on the doorknob. "Who's Derek?" "Derek Walsh, construction worker, divorced, the guy you've been calling when Chad's not available." The silence stretched so long, I thought she might have had a stroke. When she finally turned around, her face was a mask of rage and fear. "You've been spying on me." "I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." "You're sick. You're paranoid and controlling and married to a woman who's been lying to me for months. Yeah, that tends to make a man cautious." She left without another word, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I poured myself a beer and sat down to wait for the next phase of my plan to unfold. By morning, Vanessa would discover that her secret phone had been disconnected. I'd called the company and reported it stolen. Derek wouldn't be taking her calls anymore. Chad would be dealing with insurance investigators and IRS auditors, and I would be sitting in my kitchen, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, like the innocent husband I'd been pretending to be. The net was closing, and my wife was running out of places to hide. The Cedar Pines Annual Lake Festival was the biggest event of the summer, drawing families from 3 counties to enjoy carnival rides, local food vendors, and the traditional Community Values Awards ceremony. As a school district employee, I was expected to volunteer, which meant I had a legitimate reason to be near the main stage when the festivities began. It also meant I had access to the sound system. I arrived early Saturday morning to help set up tables and chairs, keeping my head down and my mouth shut while the other volunteers gossiped about the latest town drama. Apparently, Chad Brennan had been visited by insurance investigators on Thursday, and his auto shop was crawling with auditors. Someone had also reported him to the state licensing board for using unlicensed mechanics. "Couldn't happen to a nicer guy," muttered Tom Bradley, who ran the hardware store. "Chad's been cutting corners for years." "I heard the IRS is looking at him too," added Sarah Martinez, the principal's wife. "Something about unreported income." I nodded along sympathetically while I tested the microphone system. Everything was working perfectly. By noon, the festival was in full swing. Families spread blankets on the grass, while children ran between game booths and food trucks. The smell of barbecue and funnel cakes filled the air, mixing with the sounds of laughter and carnival music. I spotted Vanessa near the beer garden, looking stressed and underdressed compared to her usual festival appearance. No new outfit this year, no expensive accessories. The financial freeze was clearly taking its toll. Chad was nowhere to be seen. According to Ralph, he'd left town Thursday night after the investigators showed up, claiming he had business in Chicago. His auto shop was closed indefinitely. At 2 p.m., Mayor Henderson took the stage to begin the Community Values Award ceremony. This was the festival's most prestigious event, honoring local citizens who exemplified the town's commitment to family, integrity, and service. I watched from behind the sound booth as the mayor droned through his opening remarks, thanking sponsors and volunteers. The crowd was restless, more interested in their beer and barbecue than civic awards. Before we begin today's presentations, the mayor continued, I'd like to recognize some of our long-serving community members, people who've been part of Cedar Pines for decades, who've contributed to our schools, our businesses, and our neighborhoods. He called out several names, including mine. Jack Morrison, who's kept our high school running for 15 years. Jack, come on up here. I hadn't expected this, but it was perfect. I walked to the stage amid polite applause, shaking the mayor's hand and accepting a small plaque. Jack, would you like to say a few words? Mayor Henderson asked, gesturing to the microphone. Actually, I would, I said, stepping up to the podium. Thank you. The crowd quieted, expecting the usual brief thank you speech. Instead, I pulled out a folded sheet of paper and cleared my throat. I've lived in Cedar Pines my whole life, I began, my voice carrying clearly over the festival grounds. I've watched this town grow and change, seen families come and go, witnessed the best and worst of human nature. Scattered nods from the audience. So far, so good. I've learned that small towns have a unique way of handling problems. We talk, we share information, we look out for each other. I paused, scanning the crowd until I found Vanessa's pale face near the beer garden. Sometimes we even protect each other from uncomfortable truths. A murmur ran through the crowd. This wasn't going where they'd expected. For example, I continued, we all know that Chad Brennan has been cheating his customers for years, overcharging for parts, billing for work he didn't do, using unlicensed mechanics. But nobody said anything because, well, that's just Chad being Chad. The murmur grew louder. People were looking around, wondering where this was going. We also know that some of our neighbors have been having affairs, sneaking around, lying to their spouses, making fools of the people who trust them. But we don't talk about that either because it's none of our business. I could see Mayor Henderson shifting nervously behind me, probably wondering if he should cut me off. But I was just getting started. Well, I'm here to tell you that sometimes it becomes everyone's business. Sometimes the lies get so big, so elaborate, that they start affecting the whole community. I pulled out my phone and held it up. For instance, did you know that Vanessa Morrison, my wife of 23 years, has been having affairs with at least 2 different men, including Chad Brennan, who's been telling people his wife was visiting family in Springfield while he was screwing my wife in their marital bed? The crowd erupted. People were standing up, craning their necks to see Vanessa, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the ground. Did you know, I continued over the noise, that Tina Brennan has never visited her sister in Springfield? In fact, her sister has never heard of her. Tina's been shacked up with her own boyfriend while Chad was busy with mine. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Holy shit!" Mayor Henderson was frantically gesturing for me to stop, but I ignored him. And did you know that my loving daughter, who I've been supporting through college, has been telling her friends that I'm paranoid and jealous? That her mother is just trying to have a social life and I'm making a big deal out of nothing? I spotted Maddie in the crowd. She must have come home for the weekend. Her face was bright red with embarrassment. Well, Maddie, I said, looking directly at her, here's your mother's social life. I held up my phone again, this time playing the video I'd recorded outside Chad's house. The crowd fell silent as they watched Vanessa entering Chad's home, staying for hours, leaving in the early morning. This was taken last Tuesday night, I announced, while my wife was supposedly having drinks with friends at the Rusty Anchor. Ralph, you want to tell everyone whether Vanessa was at your bar that night? Ralph, who was standing near the beer garden, shook his head. Never saw her. The crowd was buzzing now, a mix of shock, excitement, and second-hand embarrassment. This was the kind of drama that would be talked about for years. So here's what I want everyone to know, I said, my voice rising over the noise. I'm not paranoid. I'm not jealous. I'm not having a midlife crisis. I'm just a man who got tired of being lied to by people who thought I was too stupid to figure out the truth. I could see Vanessa pushing through the crowd, trying to reach the stage. Her face was streaked with tears and makeup, her carefully constructed image crumbling in real time. "Jack, please," she called out. "Don't do this." "Don't do what, Vanessa? Tell the truth? Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be about?" She reached the base of the stage, looking up at me with desperate eyes. "We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can what? Pretend this never happened? Pretend you didn't spend months lying to me, stealing from me, making me look like a fool?" The crowd was completely silent now, watching our private drama play out in public. "I loved you," I said, my voice carrying across the festival grounds. "For 23 years I loved you. I worked extra shifts to pay for your clothes, your car, your dreams. I supported you when you went back to school. I bragged about you to anyone who would listen." Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't care. "And you threw it all away for what? A greasy mechanic and a construction worker? You destroyed our marriage, our family, our daughter's respect for both of us? For what?" Vanessa was sobbing openly now, her hands reaching toward me. "Jack, I'm sorry. I made mistakes, but we can fix this." "No," I said, stepping back from the microphone. "We can't." I walked off the stage, leaving Vanessa standing there in front of the entire town, exposed and humiliated. The crowd parted as I made my way through, some people patting my shoulder, others just staring. I got in my truck and drove home, leaving the festival and my old life behind. 3 hours later, Vanessa came home. She found me in the garage, packing my tools into boxes. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Somewhere else. The house is yours. I never liked it anyway. But the truck, the tools, and half our savings are coming with me." "Jack, please, we can work through this." I stopped packing and looked at her. Really looked at her. She was still beautiful, even with her makeup ruined and her hair disheveled. For a moment, I could see the young woman I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. "Vanessa, do you know what the worst part of all this was?" She shook her head. "It wasn't the cheating. It wasn't even the lying. It was the way you talked about me to other people, like I was some pathetic loser who didn't deserve respect or honesty. I never—" "You did. I heard you. He's too busy fixing junk to notice anything real. That's what you said about me to your boyfriend, about the man who's been taking care of you for 23 years. She had no answer for that. "So here's what's going to happen," I continued. "I'm filing for divorce on Monday. You can keep the house, but you'll need to refinance it in your own name. You can keep your car, but you'll need to make the payments yourself. And you can keep whatever's left of your reputation after today." "What about Maddie's college?" "What about it? You're a paralegal with a good job. You figure it out." I finished loading my truck and walked toward the door. Vanessa grabbed my arm. "Jack, don't leave like this. Don't let it end like this." I gently pulled free from her grip. "You ended it months ago, Vanessa. I just made it official." I drove away from Cedar Pines that night, heading west toward a new life. In my rearview mirror, I could see the lights of the town growing smaller and smaller until they disappeared entirely. 6 months later, I heard through Ralph that Vanessa had lost the house, couldn't make the payments on her paralegal salary. Chad never came back to town, and Tina filed for divorce, taking half his assets. Derek Walsh had sent Vanessa a scathing email calling her a liar and a cheat. Maddie finished college on student loans and a part-time job. She never called me, never wrote, never acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, her paranoid father had been right all along, but that was okay. I'd learned something important in Cedar Pines. Sometimes the truth is the best revenge of all. They called me the villain for destroying my wife's life in front of the whole town. Guess what? I wore that mask better than any of them wore their fake smiles.